Welcome back to more Bloodborne Boardgame expansion stuff. We are still going down the saga of the Chalice Dungeon expansion from the Bloodborne Boardgame. And today we are taking out the Keeper of the Old Lords, this little Big Hat Logan, big sword wielding dude. And to begin painting, we're doing what we have done many times before, using the clean water, using the dirty water, using some kitchen roll, and using a wet palette for all of our painting mixing needs. The same old horrible sponge that I've kept for many months now, definitely needs replacing. And popping on a sheet and using a card to iron out any wrinkles that are on there so it's a nice flat surface for mixing, and we're ready to start painting. So we have our little keeper here, and we're going to prime him with some black, and he's ready to start highlighting. So we're getting our horrible old painting board that I don't really care too much about, so I'm not too fussed if I get paint on it. Grabbing some thinner, grabbing some cleaner, and we can start airbrushing. So I'll pop some Liquitex white ink. You can use any kind of acrylic that you like, anything that goes through an airbrush to do some highlighting. I just like to use ink. And onto a little makeshift holder that we have, I'm popping the little keeper on, and from a high up angle facing down, I'll just start highlighting him, making sure that the brighter points are on the tops and it's falling off into the darker points towards the bottom and the undersides. And that gives us a lovely zenithal highlight ready for contrast painting. So to begin our painting job, I'm going to be grabbing some snakebite leather, which is a lovely mid-tone brown, perfect for leathers, obviously, and I'm going to be popping it on his big pointy witch hat. And once that's painted on, I'm going to grab some darker brown contrast paint, which will be some of this Garagak sewer contrast, and I'll be popping this on the shawl that's going over his armour. Feel free to use any sort of other browns. You can use the same browns on each one so it's more cohesive. I just like to mix things up, make them a bit different, make them stand out a bit more. And then once I have that shawl done, I'm going to be popping some Basilicanum grey contrast, which is a nice grey contrast. And I'm going to be popping that on the robes, so everything that's sitting underneath the armour, so this sort of like bottom skirt half of the robes. It's a really good contrast that's sort of like not too dark that it's overpowering the highlight underneath, but it's dark enough that you're getting nice contrast that's reacting well to the zenithal highlight. I'll also paint in the sleeves as well, and all the sort of like bits that are in between the armour, like the little, you can see like the little holes at the back there, making sure that they're painted in as well. From there, I'm going to be using some lead belcher, which is a nice sort of gunmetal metallic, and a very tiny dry brush, and I'll just be very faintly tickling on this gunmetal onto the armour parts of what he's wearing, so these sort of like parts that are hanging on the waist, the sort of iron gauntlets as well. They're all going to get a nice dry brushing coating of the metallic tone. Dry brushing just means that I'm not getting too much paint on it, I'm still getting a good application of it. Also painting the boots as well, and the face. If the face was still in focus, that would be nice. And then once I have the metallics painted in, I'm going to be using some Nuln oil, which is a gloss shader. It'll just sink into all those recesses, give us a bit of glossiness, and give us a bit of contrast to all the metal parts. I'm also going to be using it over everything that I've painted as well, just to give us an overall glossy wash over everything, you know. With that done, I'm moving on to the sword, and I'm painting the sword with a thin layer of Eshin Grey, because I want to try some sort of like light bouncy kind of effects on it to make it look a bit more interesting rather than just metallics. So I'm going to be painting on some white into these sort of like staggered blocks onto the sword, and blending it out into greys, and then within the greys I'm painting some blacks, blending those out, so I'm trying to sort of make it a bit more seamless between these different tones so that we get this kind of like nice light bounce effect. So now that we have that done, we're moving on to the next part, which will be some Mournfang Brown, which is going to be used as our midtones of the hat. So I'll use some Mournfang Brown, and I'm going to kind of target one side of the hat and sort of fade it off into the snakebite leather towards the back, so we sort of get a nice gradient from a lighter to a darker brown. Using the same brown as highlights on the shawl as well will give us a bit of variation and highlight to those parts as well. And then also target it onto these sort of like little leather parts on the armour, so he has these sort of pouches and this belt. They're all going to be painted with some Mournfang Brown as well. Once that's done, I'm doing the same thing, but with the greys on the sort of skirt part of the robes. So it's just some Eshin grey. I'm targeting all the raised edges and the raised wrinkles of this, mixing in some Corax white into those greys, and slowly and progressively build up brighter and brighter tones to all those raised edges, and blending them out into the darker tones. So we sort of like get that nice contrast blend between the darker recesses, slowly blending up into the lighter tones on the higher parts of the wrinkles. Very nice, and for a final little doohickey, we're going to grab some Necron Compound, which is a really nice dry metallic paint, and it's really sort of bright and shimmery, and it's great for adding highlights. So I'm going to take a little dry brush, and I'm just going to very gently and softly start bringing in some highlights onto the Nuln Oil that was put on top of the lead belcher, so we get a bit more of a shimmery, brighter metallic onto all of these parts. And with that done, I'm going to grab some black wash, basically just some black acrylic, really thinned down with a lot of water, and I'm just going to start adding this into all the sort of shadowy regions and parts where shadows will generate more, and just start blending it out, giving us a bit more darkness to things. And then you can just wash off the paint from the brush, and then just use a clean brush with a bit of water just to start blending that wash in a bit more. It's a really great technique for just beefing up some shadows. And with that, that's the Keeper of the Old Lords done, and that is another model of the Chalice Dungeon expansion done. So thank you very much for joining me once again. If you did enjoy today's video, please drop the video a like. It does very much help with the algorithmic gods of YouTube. And subscribe if you haven't already, and drop a comment if you feel so inclined. If you want to join the wonderful crew of people who are on the screen now, you can head over to my Patreon. The link is on the screen and in the description. Over there you can see lots of behind the scenes of progress shots of all the bigger dioramas and crafts that I'm doing on the channel. I also do polls every now and then, so you can vote for future projects that you'd like to see. You can also have like first dibs on any sales that I do. All those kinds of things are all on my Patreon, so if you are interested, go and check it out. And if not, I appreciate you very much for joining me today. And yeah, we've got a lot more Bloodborne content coming your way, so stick around for that. And I will see you in the next one.